thing if you average it out. I can appreciate that Rogue is probably putting Tom an ever so slight advantage here, but still everything to play for our players. And starting things off with a Druid mirror here, first of all, ignoring any of the differences in the lineup. Are there any tech differences in the Druid archetype you think are going to be swaying things one way or the other?
Yeah. Sorry, I had a bit of an audio issue. I didn't catch what you said there.
Oh, no worries. Just with the Druid mirror, is any of either list pulling into the lead?
Both of them running survival of the fittest. I favor the ones that actually do run Mount Seller on top of the usual beast package in the mirror, just because it
Mm.
gets you more consistent board presence. So I feel like Tom should have a leg up. But on the flip side, Rory is still fast survival of the fittest. So if you can get that online very early, that you have the game.
Can indeed. A little bit of a issue in getting into the game, but it does look like all in out now. And we can see just from the taskbar on the left how everything has shaken out. Bit of ramp for Tom, bit of ramp for Glory now. And it's all just about the payoff at this point. Who can capitalize on their ramp the best? And with Tom going Lightning Bloom Overflow, it's not a fast start at all, but it is one that will consistently be able to put out threats for the rest of the game.
And already for Glory, he has the option of just getting down the Twilight Runner. Both of them without Guardian Animals, as you said. They kind of just have to scrap together with the regular Beast played out. And I think for Tom, the way you respond to a stealth minion is with your own stealth minion.
Mm.
Very awkward though, because he does have the double broomsticks in hand, so you could just say, get the teacher's pet online and I can rush out the Twilight Runner when I need to for a better target.
Yeah, just like get the teacher's pet online. It's kind of a bad trade though that you're taking. I suppose Iron Bark for 2 mana isn't something that you're all too afraid of. It's definitely a close one. I mean, there was also the possibility worth considering of just passing on that turn in order to get down Vate Ysera on the following turn, which obviously is huge amounts of tempo being lost immediately, but at the potential upside of getting plenty of dragons to instantly close out the game.
It's true, especially if you could follow up with a Twilight Runner Broom, but by that point you're probably conceding that Glory can attack twice with his Twilight Runner, and you let him draw 4 cards, so I think it's reasonable from Tom to try and challenge it here. Glory passing on the Iron Bark for a value trade, because I imagine he just wants to get to play it for free the next turn, and he can still develop a Beast here.
Oh, it doesn't feel good though, does it? I guess Teacher's Pet probably coming down with Crystal Power. Just because you can.
Yep. Oh, he's holding on to the power altogether. I was going to say, if you're playing Crystal Power, I'm surprised that he committed the Nature Studies as well, because he could have just played it next turn for flexibility. But since he's not playing the Crystal Power whatsoever, then I can understand playing the Studies.
Yeah, he's playing the Kael'thas version, not the Mount Seller version, but I guess either one does want to have cheap spells in hand for if you top deck your payoff card.
Oh, Lightning Bloom picked up for Tom, so Nana doesn't quite work out next turn, but he could get an early survival of the fittest online on the following turn.
Oh, okay. I mean, my head was at Ysera right now. I've got to say, just slam that down on this turn. Next turn, Twilight Runner plus Broomstick. Seems super clean.
Actually, I am definitely more on board with that. Getting the dragons online, that sounds like a great proposition.
Because from where Tom is sat, you know, Nature Studies was just played, but the payoff didn't come off of it. This hand does, I think, start to stink of Kael'thas a little bit. You're definitely afraid of some kind of a huge push onto the board coming down. So you do, you want to push back against that with your own proactive game plan.
Well, I'm going to suggest once again early survival of the fittest. Glory can start with a Crystal Power so as not to waste the discount from Nature Studies, and he can still Bloom coin survival. It's not quite a clean trade on Ysera, but it is a huge wall on board. And then he has Thresher Broom for the follow-up, which is a huge threat.
Yeah, that's the kicker for me. If it was just kind of survival and then pray that you get some threats, I wouldn't be on board with this game plan, but it has a discrete 2-turn payoff here that is exactly what you need to do, because both players, you know, Tom was anticipating his opponent would have a big push, and he kind of did, but Glory now knows that the late game is in advantage of Tom. He has to play aggressively here to have any chance.
Very true. Tom will be able to go wider on board, although Glory can go taller, and because he has specifically Thresher, I think that does give Glory some way to fight back against dragons, but they didn't even come out, and he gets Emperor Cobra! Oh my goodness!
I mean, I was gonna say, do you ever trade in the other order specifically for only Emperor Cobra? Yikes!
I don't think you do, to be honest.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. But man, that's unlucky.
We're here.
And now,
Gidra,
is this a
right?
Gidra turn? Maybe, yeah.
Nature.
I mean, he gets to protect the Cobra this way, assuming he's going for the double trade, which I'm fine with. Okay,
8 damage on your
so
Gidra.
Okay, so my thinking was the Emperor Cobra could potentially get through a big taunt from Tom, so I like the idea of keeping it alive, but because Glory has specifically Lake Thresher Broomstick, that is bound to get through nearly any size taunt anyway. So Glory's just smelling blood, and I can respect it.
So in terms of the beast that Tom has left, he's rocking 1 Thresher, 1 Twilight Runner?
I wonder.
Yes, that's correct.
I believe, which is reasonable against this. With the room as well, you can clear off this Gidra, which is the important thing.
Yes. Gidra absolutely needs to die. The big Protodrake is a big deal as well because he gets to maintain a board after the death rattle.
Here they come. Here they come.
Looks like I'm here just in time.
So now you can trade the Amber Watcher and the Protodrake, or just go for Ironbark and Broom.
Yeah,
Most
it's
minions on
super
board. Yeah.
Even gets to keep Drake alive, plenty of damage pushing through, and I think while Glory gave himself the best chance possible here. Well, okay, sorry, to be fair, he does have Lake Thresher plus Broom, but he's running out of stuff here. Tom, again, has the late game advantage on his side. The aggressive push did not work. Is this salvageable for Glory?
This turn, definitely, but given that Tom's follow-up is survival of the fittest on the remaining minion, or go for exotic Mount Seller Wild Growth, I'm not liking Glory's chances. Oh!
Oh, wow.
Oh my god!
I've never seen that before.
That is definitely on the upper end of 7 drops you can get.
Oh man, that's so brutal. Like, he has to stick both brooms in to be able to clear it off. And to be honest, you do have to clear it off here. Otherwise, they just go overgrowth, excess mana, wild growth, excess mana, whatever. And you're just dead to fireballs.
And it's not that terrible to have to stick both brooms in because they survive. Technically value trades. Protect 1 from a hero power, and this is Glory's last stand.
It's his real last effort here, and for Tom, it's going to be a real close one. He does not have Survival of the Fittest in play yet, but even just that Bog Beam alone is a rather large deal.
This is definitely looking like a Mount Seller turn to me since he doesn't have an option to rush his own Lake Thresher. Problem is, he's not guaranteed to be able to deal with Glory's Lake Thresher, so everything that Tom plays potentially just gets blown up, and you don't really have much control over positioning because Mount Seller plays the cards for you.
Even the aggressive push did work, and I'm just being too pessimistic on this from Glory.
I mean, depends on the draw off the top and the beast, but Tom was not able to pick up another removal spell.
Oh, even that, a 5-mana 7/9, that's a great top deck to find here.
Yeah, we take those.
Trade, winning on board. Dragons have to start coming through now for Tom. Even if they do, he doesn't have the broomstick, and the Thresher is still there.
Yeah, it's really just the dragons that are out now. Tom has no brooms left. His deck is mostly just ramp and draw. So if you survival this and just say go, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is a taunt in the way. Oh!
Ooh. Lake Thresher survives. You can just happily hero power that down now without a care in
Yes.
the world.
Absolutely. Second overflow. And also Guardian Animals in hand. Glory still has Thresher and Twilight Runner in his deck. I don't think Tom can come back from this unless his dragons are huge and have Rush.
Mount Seller, Bloom, Overgrowth, excess mana. Maybe he can find the second Broom at that point and get a bunch of dragons as well.
A lot of spells. Even a single Griffin could make a huge difference here. Just being able to remove the Lake Thresher is really big, but he has used the Bog Beams now, so there's no spells that can remove the Thresher. Oh, tiny beasts!
Terrible! Terrible!
Glory just... even if you use Guardian Animals for one beast, now that he's drawn the Twilight Runner, second Thresher just closes out the game, in my opinion.
Oh, second Thresher. So disgusting.
What to do?
It's the one beast left in his deck.
So how do you do this? Is there any way to kind of cheese the effect so you never have to attack into the...
Yeah.
There is, right?
The
Yeah.
Bunny and then the Messenger Raven.
Oh, so clean.
Even
nice
gets
spot.
to bloom out another Twilight Runner. Tom has 3 portals left. Not another
not very
hothead.
big.
Not good enough.
That's a bit bigger. So is there a Broom left in his deck that he can...
There is
Try
not.
and hit-
There is,
okay.
however, an Iron Bark, so he can put together another taunt, but he just doesn't have a way to deal with either Thresher. So that's game.
Can't draw anything. Teacher's Pet. Yeah, he's just going to have his entire board swept up.
Yep. Even if all 3 of the minions have taunt, they're just one cleave away from dying.
Yeah.
I can see.
Oh, brutal way for Tom to go out there, but a very cool game from Glory. Just, I think, really showing what the heart of the Druid matchup is. Because even though Tom had all the advantage in the world in terms of value, late-game power with that early Ysera, it's much more about mid-game tempo, being the one to dictate the trades, as we perfectly saw there with those Threshers sticking for multiple turns there for Glory. If you can't remove those, there is no avenue back into the game.
Yeah, I think Glory played to the hand that he got perfectly, which said that you can take a dead turn to go for the survival of the fittest because he had exactly Thresher, Broom in hand to come back from nearly any board state that Tom was able to put together. So a good spot there. I don't, however, think that Tom's Druid is in a bad spot to win later on, though, because Glory still has his Demon Hunter.
Yep, still got the Demon Hunter, and even the Mage to a lesser extent, I feel like is not the best matchup for the Mage against the Druid. Can be kind of a close one, and if Tom finds any hand like the one he just had in that game, I think it should be fairly safe for the Druid going forward. It is going to be actually exactly that matchup as we were just talking about. And this is where I think the build of Mage makes an absolutely huge difference, because it still feels like, even though there's a little bit of gray area in the middle, for the most part, it's Spellwing plus Arcane Breath or Arcane Intellect plus Conjurer's Calling. And even though I've played a lot of the version that Glory's gone for here with the Dragon package, the Arcane Breath, I do feel like, personally, the Conjurer's Calling version is that little bit better against the Druid, just because of the ability to push onto the board with Giant plus Conjurer's Calling. Before we find out, however, sorry, as I don't even let you respond to my genius analysis there, I just have to be correct with no retort. We are going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to see if Glory can indeed take the second win of the series with his Mage up against the Druid. We'll be right back. Glory is facing down Tom here in APAC Grandmasters, and as I so rudely didn't even let you respond to me before the break, Gia, I'm going to let you give us your rundown on Mage versus Druid. Now, where do you stand, as you don't stand, I believe, as quite so diehard of a Mage fan as myself?
Well, actually, recently I have become a huge Mage fan. Just
Oh, I know
jamming
it.
it for the Brawliseum has been really fun, and I agree that before the break you were mentioning that you prefer the non-Cobalt Spellkin version. That's also the one that I have a bit of a preference for, just because I find that the 5-drops are a little bit clunky. But also, on top of running Arcane Intellect and Conjurer's Calling, I think that list commonly runs one of Devolving Missiles in one of the tech slots, which I think is a great card against Druid that often buffs one minion, or if you don't have an answer to Twilight Runner because you're not running the Firebrands, you can just devolve it away.
Yeah, I think Glory's list in particular for me just doesn't have enough bite to it. I really like the list, even with all the 5-drops that you're running. I still really like to find a spot for Jandis. I just think, even though it doesn't necessarily fit the theme of the deck, it's so powerful of a card that it kind of breaks all the rules. You just stick it in there, throw it down on turn 5, and you're likely to be putting yourself in a very good spot. Whereas this list, with no Conjurer's Calling, no Jandis, it's a little passive, but it can still build up those extremely powerful Mage combos.
Right, I think this is more all in on the big Sorcerer's Apprentice combo turns, but I also like having a bit of the minion package because just raw stats is traditionally been a good way to deal with Druid. But Tom's opener has been fire. Studies into Wild Growth, into Overgrowth. Oh my goodness, Glory needs to draw some miracles.
Yeah, it's literally perfect for Tom. The only thing he's missing is, of course, the Guardian Animals waiting to come down afterwards. But if he can find himself a Broomstick, even just Runic Carvings actually is the payoff, is already pretty powerful to sweep up the board.
Yeah, for rush on everything, that's pretty decent. You could even think about putting them in Glowfly mode, but now that a spell damage minion has hit the board, you're probably too scared of Raz.
Still not a bad start whatsoever here for Glory.
Oh.
He's got himself a pretty juicy hand now, really only looking for Shenvala or Mana Giant, I suppose, now to actually start turning this value into damage, which you want to start converting as soon as possible, especially when your opponent hits the Dream Guardian Animals, hits the Lake Thresher as well, which was a one-of left in the deck. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Oh yes, this is very, very powerful for Tom, but let's not forget that this second apprentice from Glory was generated, so he can come back this turn. Doesn't have quite a way to regenerate value after you go off with Evocation, but he certainly needs to answer this board.
Yeah, this is the turn every single day of the week. I'm picking Brain Freeze here as well, because you can throw it in for free.
Well, with this Combustion pick, it looks like he might not even play the Evocation, given that he has second Apprentice in hand.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, if this Missiles cooperates, then Glory is in a pretty okay spot. Oh no! It didn't cooperate!
Yikes.
Okay, he
Yikes.
technically still has. I was gonna say Raz can clean up the next turn, but look at this overflow now from Tom.
Okay, so coin nature studies overflow? Or just coin overflow?
Yeah. I think you cannot necessarily avoid overdrawing. It depends on what he gets off the top.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at going for nature studies just to maybe hit like bog beam or something, but I mean, he's already found it anyway. It's just the absolute dream. Nature studies
can go again next turn, but he doesn't have that much mana to work with.
Right. And for Tom, this sequencing is actually very, very smart. He can just go for nature studies and then float a mana. Float the spell. And then next turn, of course, 9 mana survival of the fittest if his board sticks. And if his board does not stick, just play a couple beasts, whatever. He's winning by so much, it doesn't really matter.
Indeed. Winning on board, able to put down survival of the fittest, and Glory does not have very much mana to work with this evocation. And so he's actually just going to juice the apprentice up a little bit longer. I think this is the line, but you do have to hope that your opponent's hand is dry.
Okay, fair enough. I suppose the apprentice didn't necessarily have any immediate payoff because you're a little bit before being able to play out the deep freeze, the power of creation, all of that good stuff as well.
My head's that you need to top deck Shanvala the next turn to actually make the apprentice turn accompanied by board development. Because if you can freeze everything, that's just delaying the inevitable if you're not putting your own board down at the same time. But Tom has picked up a Mount Seller now, so this is actually a decision point. I think I'm still on board for the fittest, though.
I honestly don't know. They're both so powerful here. What is even better?
About 15 to face right now. I like that.
That sounds powerful. I'm on board.
I'm going to respect the one minion. I think recognizes that the only way he loses from here is consistent board freezes one turn after another.
And I think we're going in now. Arcane Breath active, so he can try and find another miracle spell, perhaps, to dig himself out of this one. Okay, that's freeze.
This could be a Raz turn instead. Just pray they don't have the broom.
I think you got to play the evocation here now that the apprentice is down.
Sure. This is the last apprentice that he had in hand. Oh, box, but unplayable.
Yikes. Draw a million cards. It's either that or potion.
Can you fit in, the apprentice copy, and then you could still play, I guess, nothing of consequence onto the board. You really wish you could pocket the Cross Nova.
Yeah. Well, he's going for the card draw immediately instead. I can respect this because every card is a chance at Mana Giant. That is the card that you need to be hitting here. Frostbolt, sure.
Or he gets the whole turn in. You have my respect, buddy. That was not easy.
It was not indeed.
He has the good positioning for Lake Thresher as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's 8 attack at this point, so even though, yes, you are correct, it's the good positioning, it doesn't feel like the good positioning because your board would still end up getting wiped.
Well, no room for Tom, though, so this could end up being a Mount Seller turn instead. Not guaranteed to deal with the Mana Giant, but he can Bog Beam away the Apprentice and set up a taunt with Iron Bark at the very least.
Yeah, I guess he needs to think about... Is this ever a Runic Carvings turn? Because you can clear off the Apprentice and the Giant, and that's, talking about the way that he loses the game again. It's Frost Nova, it's Cone of Cold, it's Ray of Frost, it's these freeze effects that would stop him from developing onto the board, or attacking with his minions even.
Okay, so as long as he clears off both the Giant and the Apprentice, then I am fine with this. I guess I had a little bit respect for Giant, less respect for Giant in this list that doesn't have Conjure's Calling. But now that Tom has seen both Apprentice and Evocation, I think he knows that Glory's refill potential is very limited.
It says explode! True mastery takes dedication.
It's a good Raz. this would normally be enough to just sweep away the Twilight Runner, but obviously we're in the late game for Druid, which is, I suppose, turn 6 onwards, really, with all the ramp.
Okay, start with this attack. If you get Broom, everything changes. There's the Broom.
Oh. Is it still just Mount Cellar? It's pretty nuts, right?
Mount Cellar, Iron Guard,
Yeah.
Innervate, Broom. Yeah. As long as he holds on to one Broom for the other Thresher in case of emergency, I'm down.
Even in Biggin as well. Worth mentioning now that the second Guardian Animals will not pull the last Teacher's Pet as well. Gotta be careful there. I've made that mistake.
So relevant here.
Just saying, I've made that mistake.
It's true. Me too. I definitely have made that mistake on ladder and gotten rightfully, deservedly emoted for it. Okay, so studies into Steward into Frostnova out, right?
Yep. It's technically enough to survive with Cone of Cold against what you're seeing.
I'm just looking at Deathwing for the next turn. There's a Steward.
I think you just play the Cone of Cold though, unless like if tanking the damage is just too much and you die to the hero power over the next few turns, you can go for it.
But the Cone can't hit both the Mount Cellar and the Twilight Runner.
Right, but you ping the 3-1 and then you are technically alive.
At 1? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, at 3.
Yeah. Which isn't great, but it's the way to guaranteed stay alive.
Probably higher odds than looking for Frostnova. Cobras for everyone today. And now, the Deathwing.
Oh, maybe if you play the Deathwing quick enough after the Mana Giant, it won't realize.
I mean, you can throw in the Mana Giant as a tribute to Deathwing.
Okay, so real talk though, it probably has to be Deathwing, but is there anything you can get off Steward? Like, if you get Blizzard off of Steward with the Mana Giant, is that a win condition?
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, I think for me, the big kicker is Glory knows that after Tom has drawn all but 3 cards in the deck, it's very likely he has the second Broom and Thresher, or just anything to pair with the Broom, Pierce Deathwing, and then Glory's 100% dead by that point. So I think it is still Steward here to look for some type of freeze and maybe bait Tom into committing more resources into Deathwing. But honestly, all of those lines feel bad because Deathwing, even if it connects phase once, Tom has time to play Ysera, etc., etc.
This goes with the Deathwing, and I think we can quite clearly see it's not gonna be a game-winning Deathwing here.
Indeed. You can either stall it, remove it, even ignore it, and Tom probably still wins.
11-14, hello?
I mean, the Embiggen is ever so slightly annoying.
I supply only the finest creatures.
But really, Tom can just set up a taunt and be chilling. Or the Twilight Broom. Oh, I guess you don't want to draw by this point. Pressure Broom. It's just funny seeing these little desert hares go up against the biggest dragon.
Okay.
Rick into Frostnova?
Yeah, or Evocation Frostnova, or Tome of Intellect Frostnova. Hey! Yeah, even one thief here can't get the job done. It is going to be end of the road for Glory, and a perfectly cromulent game from Tom to be equalizing the series at 1 game apiece. Both Druids having taken the win, kind of expected for our players, Gia, and it also does kind of shake up our predictions of who we thought was going to be in the lead.
Indeed. Druids, I think, are very, very good in the meta right now, especially since there's so much Soul Demon Hunter, although we haven't seen that particular matchup play out just yet. Now that both Druids are out of the way, and of course both Warriors were bound out of the way, the big kicker is how does Demon Hunter match up against Rogue? And according to ladder stats at least, it seems like Soul Demon Hunter does not even have a big enough sample size from where I'm looking. Oh man, spoiler.
Yeah. Well, I agree that's one big question. The real big question for me is what on earth is my hair doing here? I don't even know how that's physically possible. What on earth is happening there? But also, I think that Demon Hunter versus Rogue, as opposed to Demon Hunter versus Mage, is a lot closer. There's some real counterplay from the Mage, not only in terms of aggression and obviously trying to proactively race your opponent into taking the win with questing or Edwin, but also in terms of actually putting up some defensive capabilities with Hana in particular. There's a lot of secrets that are really annoying for the Demon Hunter.
It's true. Any ice barrier or misdirection can just stall the lethal push from Demon Hunter, especially if they're not able to stick minions. But now that I have looked at the correct deck list, the sample size is good enough. And it does seem like Soul Demon Hunter is favored against Secret Rogue, about 58%. So that's actually pretty good for the Demon Hunter. And I'd
good.
have to assume that when you're running the wand makers, additional ways to generate one-cost spells to hit consume magic, that is very, very important because I think Rogue's best shot is getting an early Edwin.
Agreed. Definitely the best chance to take a win, but can, at least in some ways, extend into the late game a little bit, I believe, can the Rogue.
You asked for it.
It's one of the classic things, though, where you have to be making sure, you know, if you ask a Rogue player, they'll say the Rogue's favored. If you ask a Demon Hunter player, they'll say the Demon Hunter's favored. That's the way it always is at the top level. But before we get into Rogue versus Demon Hunter, it's good old Rogue versus Mage. Classic matchup from this season of ladder play. And one that I find very, very interesting. I enjoy playing this matchup a lot.
It is very fun because there's generation on both sides. Rogue can suffer from the freeze effects from the Mage, but if the Mage is not careful, they can hand over their big combo to a Plagiarize,
Yeah.
and Rogue can just throw it all back the other way. For Glory, I love the Mulligan keeping the package deal of Apprentice and Mana Cyclone, but because that's not a play you want to make on turn 2, you still want to keep Solarian.
I will crush your delusions of
Man, my perception of the deck has shifted so much over the course of playing it, because I do still agree it's what you're trying to... You should hold on to Apprentice Cyclone. But I think when I started playing the deck, I was like, oh, that's the absolute dream. You get to generate like 5 or 6 cards. Now I'm just like, that doesn't make my Mana Giant cheap right now. I want Evocation. That's all I care about. I want a cheap Giant.
It's true. Cyclone does pale in comparison to Evocation. Tom's turn is a little bit awkward. All of his 3-drops want to be played with other cards in the same turn. And he's forced to play those smaller cards just to get on board. The spell damage minions are far less impactful in Rogue than in Mage, so I don't think Primordial Studies is the pick.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I was kind of thinking you go for it anyway, just because you're reasonably likely to be able to hit a 2-cost minion, which would cost 1, of course, that you can then throw down with the Miscreant next turn. Whereas this way is less tempo, you know, floating a mana here and playing the Tome of Intellect, which does nothing to the board next turn. It's a very slow approach for Tom.
That's fair, but if you do whiff on the 2-cost one,
It's
then
bad.
it wrecks the whole curve, right?
That's fair.
Especially since you don't have Solarian and Lab Partner in the pool as a Rogue.
Oh, up to no good. Me too.
Okay, good lackeys for Tom. Probably just looking at daggering down the Solarian.
I do agree. You're not that afraid of damage quite yet.
Like, it's awkward because the Mana Cyclone value trades
So
Cat,
many
but
options.
you can just use the other charge of the dagger to get rid of the Mana Cyclone the next turn if that happens.
There's a whole chain. There once was a Mana Cyclone who value traded a Cat, and then there was a Miscreant who value traded a Mana Cyclone, and a Giant who value traded a Miscreant. Goes on and on.
Wait, imagine a giant value trading.
Well, I mean, I don't know, Gia. We've seen some pretty sketch value trades already today.
A simple spell.
That is fair. Or are you just gonna convert his coin into 2 additional spells? You're definitely okay with spending coin by this point because he has enough mana to pop off next turn, but he has double side quest of the same variant, so that's kind of unlucky. Oh no!
Whoa! Yep, I think Glory's reaction there says it all. Those are 2 absolutely premium outcomes off of Jandis.
And he can just mini pop off here. You get a good Wand Thief spell. This could be a lot cleaner. Ray of Frost is the best.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oi, oi, oi. This is mini pop off.
Okay, so you want 2 missiles to hit 5-4. Because
Yeah.
you know that's the fusion minion, so good order for Glory.
Oh,
Oh no, they're
Oh.
all so expensive! He does have Blizzard into
disaster.
Flame Strike though, that's a big deal.
good point. Very, very good point. So playing the, I guess, defensive game for the moment is Glory, which can work against Rogue, to be fair. 6 damage is often enough to deal with most of the minions. It's just when you start factoring Edwin and questing, though, that it starts to get a lot more shaky.
I would like for Tom to develop either of those this turn.
Agreed.
Starting with a Lackey means maybe Edwin. It's weird though, because you don't just want to tempo out the Blackjack Stunner, so he could just be floating 1 mana for the Edwin turn.
Oh, tempo stunner.
With Secret in hand.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. Yeah. Take the 6/6 and hold on to your contingency in case there's Mana Giant Freeze coming down soon.
But it looks pretty much perfect here, right? With the way it works out for Glory. Blizzard into Flame Strike clears off the Edwin and the Mozaki.
The only small consideration is he can finish the side quest this turn with Mana
Yeah,
Giant.
I just realized that.
But I do not think that is worth it. Blizzard into Flame Strike and your Mana Giant is 2 mana cheaper by the time it comes down and probably way more impactful on the board.
Yes, I agree. It's tempting, but you're probably looking at like a turn 9 activation at the moment, which is still powerful. You know, activating it with Shenvala so that you can then immediately get the spells is super strong.
Actually, Shenvala's an elemental too, right? So,
Right, yeah. That's
Okay.
that's what I was thinking of activating it with this turn, but I still
okay.
think Blizzard's better.
Whoa!
Wow.
Well, I was thinking activate it with Giant, and then I was like, that's the worst of the 3 options between Blizzard, Shenvala, and Giant. But Glory is going to go for it. Picks up Ray of Frost. I think he was just going for the odds of getting exactly this spell here.
It was very likely, with obviously 2 of them being left in the deck. But risky too.
I'm gonna be very happy he held onto this Stunner, but it might not be played this turn because the Giant is just gonna be cheaper on the follow-up.
Well, yeah, I mean, he could just eviscerate it for... I don't even know how much spell damage this is at this point. It's just super dead.
Or save the Abyss for face. Huh. There's a
I
lot
guess.
of different lines that could have happened.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh!
Oh no!
Disaster! Absolute
bad one.
disaster. That's the worst one.
I mean, lab partner Blizzard still looks fine.
Okay.
Testing first for never surrender, I suppose.
Yeah.
And also just the chance of getting rid of Hadar is very important.
No redemption, no never surrender. Best possible outcome here for Glory.
The Tom is not naturally... Sorry, he has 1 Eviscerate in the deck left, and that's probably why Glory was trying to be as respectful as possible of the Hanar, because it synergizes so well with the Mozaki.
I wonder.
But how much damage is this at this point? If you go Secret, Shadow Step your Edwin, play it this secret passage, do you ever find lethal by hitting the second one?
Give me a quest.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe
I
not.
was thinking the secret chain and not necessarily Step Edwin, but now that he's committing the questing as well.
Does look that way.
Oh.
Okay, only 8 damage. Only 2 mana for 8 damage. Well, the Blizzard into Flamestrike plan clearly did not work quite so well on turn 6 into 7 here. I'm sorry, 7 into 8 is 6 onto 7.
What to do? What to do?
So he still has the second half of Ray of Frost and Magic Trick. It's gonna be a Shanvala and Prey turn.
1 activation on it.
I was thinking he needed to hit another freeze off of the Magic Trick anyway.
There.
But looks like could be Mana Giant.
It's going to be close, I think, for sure, because he's clearly setting up for an activation next turn. He may want to get it to the point where Giant is so cheap he can activate for 0 next turn. But I guess more likely Shanvala will activate next turn.
Wow,
Okay.
entity. Yeah, well, I guess the Giant didn't do anything because he summoned a poison minion. It got very complicated because Glory wasn't sure what secret he was playing into until midway through the turn.
Oi, oi, oi. And now, if an Eviscerate can be found from the deck here for Tom, is it just lethal?
10 damage right now because the last one dealt. Oh! 11 damage? I think.
That's plus 8. That's 12 damage, I believe.
12?
That's just game.
Yeah, because Glory's secret did not prevent any damage whatsoever. Instant passage from Tom. That was very cool.
Very, very cool. And I suppose one way to be winning the matchup. And I guess also, if we want to talk about the builds of the deck here, another reason why I feel like Jandis should be in the deck. That is an outlier for sure in terms of how powerful it was, but it can happen. And that's what I always talk about with the build of the deck, putting a particular card in the list. It's why I've been an advocate for Mindrender Elucia still being in the priest list. Yes, it's dead some of the time. Yes, it's not always that powerful. But sometimes it just instantly wins you the game, which is exactly what we saw from Jandis there, which is why I don't like Glory's list of the Mage quite so much, because I want to see Jandis in there as well. It's a dual class card for Mage and Rogue, and I think it's just way too powerful to not be included.
I'm also of the opinion that Conjurer's Calling could have been a huge deal there. Let's say
Yeah.
if Glory had Conj to go along with the Giant in hand, it suddenly makes the Blizzard into Flamestrike on curve type game plan a lot more enticing because after you clean up the board, then you go Giant Conj, and then at most they're likely just to step 1 minion. In the end, there very interesting lines in the middle. I would love to go back and just kind of hash out how the different lines could have played out, but ultimately it will just come down to Tom on his Mage now up against the Mirror and 1 unfavorable.
Indeed. Looking to be in a pretty good spot, I think. That was, like, again, another one of the matchups that's pretty good for Rogue. Maybe, a slight bit of error in my analysis at the start, because I do kind of generally see Rogue and Mage as being fairly even, because in my ladder stats, I feel as playing a lot of Mage, I do fairly well against the Rogue. But obviously, these are GM players. They're not going to be playing Rogue like the average opponent that I will be facing at my Legend ladder rank, which will remain unnamed, as they are obviously playing the deck at a much higher level. But I think it's just a continuation of, as you pointed out at the start, that Tom does feel like he's at just a slight advantage all the way through here.
This is a difficult matchup though, and especially off-coin for Mage, it makes things a little bit harder for them to discount Mana Giant, get the additional value out of the combo turns, and that's why I'm very surprised by the Wand Thief without combo activator keep from Tom.
Yep, I also find that surprising, especially when we factor in the the mass hysteria that has been thrown down from the rest of the APAC players in regard to this matchup. We're seeing Apprentice being thrown, Apprentice with Evocation being thrown, and Tom is sat here keeping One Thief on the play. I very rarely keep One Thief, apart from like on coin, against the most aggressive of matchups.
I would agree. I tend to keep it if you just have like 2 1-drops to go alongside it if you're on the play, so that is somewhat of a curve. It does work out okay for Tom because Glory has not taken out the Astromancer Solarian, so Tom can just take a value trade here. Gotta say, I was least expecting the secret.
Yeah, I guess it's Netherwind Portal is pretty powerful as a countermeasure against like Blade Dance, just because it means that you'll have something stuck on the board after a big clear. And his hand is lacking a little bit of value at the moment.
That is true. He needed card draw more than anything, and I suppose a board. So it does work out with his curve of Solarian plus.
He's just straight up curving out. No fancy combos here from Tom. Just playing minions each turn and hoping that that can get him there.
He had 1 cram session, it could be a whole different story, but
Yeah.
it is just the minion game plan so far. For Glory, though, he has 3 weapons in hand. I'd imagine it's time for one of them to come down.
Demons?
I guess I'm crazy for wanting to go Blade Dance here, right? It's probably not quite impactful enough yet. Yeah, you save it for the Giants or the Jandis or something.
It's a bit awkward that Glory's hero power doesn't do much more than healing him for 1. But the problem with that board is I don't think he had a license to go Marrow Slicer face just yet because he was falling behind. Oh no!
Yeah, that's the disaster. I mean, speaking about Marrow Slicer face, as Tom's faces a miserable turn here, I do think there was some license to go for that. You tank a little bit of damage now, but if they have Raz, I suppose, as the best possible follow-up next turn, you do just have Twin Slice plus Blade Dance to clear everything up, and you even have the coin to remove a counterspell that's potentially there as well.
That's fair.
I wouldn't have hated it, I've got to say.
Glory's hand just plays a little bit slow because after the Marrow Slicer charges, he didn't quite have the Lapidaries, the Glaive Bounds to follow up. So even now, I'm looking potentially at just swinging to the Cyclone and equip the Marrow Slicer, just have a slightly slower curve because he does have double jump for Skull of Gul'dan next turn with the
True.
save.
Very good point, very good point. He does run 1 copy of Consume Magic in the list, so not guaranteed Skull, but very likely, and he can adapt if he draws the spell magic instead. And I think that it's a really good point you bring up about the slow game plan, because my instinct, as I clearly laid out, was to play aggressively with the Blade Dance, aggressively with the weapons. But I suppose, even at this point, the main way that Glory is losing is a big, giant Conjurer's Calling turn, or a big Shenvala turn, all in one swing. And by holding back the Blade Dance, he has the counterplay against that. Not that he's even going to need it in this instance.
Oh, that is depressing for Tom, forced to play out a Tempo Shenvala. He just has nothing else to do. It's going into a Marrow Slicer, but Glory still doesn't have full info on what the secret is. Started with 1 maker. I feel like even if it's counterspell, you could still start with coin there, but obviously the double jump looks really bad if you don't hit the skull.
Yeah, I mean, my inclination was to say he wants to continue not playing spells to play around Netherwind Portal, but that was clearly not the game plan here. He's going with an aggressive use of Blade Dance here. Okay, he's got board control here. Tom clearly doesn't have much going on in his hand.
Yeah, I think this is a good compromise from Glory because I don't think he does a good turn if he plays no spells whatsoever. So he's saying, let me develop and get rid of the Netherwind Portal minion. And he still has a charge of Marrow Slicer to work with, and he just gets the skull anyway. Okay, Glory.
Yep. This looks like a fat dub to me. Easy peasy win.
Especially after you get the pen flingers. You never lose from that point. Oh, Militia!
Yikes!
2 fragments, John.
Yeah, that was the 2 in his deck, right?
There's still 4 in his deck.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, was that not a pen flinger shoot face and just return it to your hand turn?
That was 100% a pen flinger face and return it back to your hand turn. Unironically as well, I think that was just the correct play. You just want to get as many activations with that as possible. Like you can, I mean, I guess still do it with like coin double jump or something on this turn, but that feels unnecessary.
Time grows short.
It's hard to hash out because obviously mana efficiency is the main goal here, and I think you can still get full mana usage out of Twin Slice and Pen Flinger next turn.
So you have one spell to hit evocation is the out, as I see it.
Technically 2 spells you can fit in the punch, but then you don't have mana to work with.
I think I'd rather take my 1 here. Pretty good, okay.
Arcane Explosion?
Nope. Nope! That's going to be game 5 here for Tom and Glory. A miserable outing there for Tom. And although the draws were very unlucky there in the mid-game, absolutely, I don't want to be too harsh on him. It does harken back to the mulligan, which was definitely not the way that we have seen most players approach the matchup.
That is true, especially against Demon Hunter. We've seen people even tossing Apprentice when they really want to make sure they hit that early curve. And while I don't like tossing Apprentice, I understand the importance of trying to hit those cram sessions against Demon Hunter, or even just Primordial Studies to complement a possible cram session. Feel like that could have been a bit different, or at least a bit more percentage in Tom's favor if he had tossed the 1-2.
Yeah. Maybe it does speak to more of a like board-focused approach, which he was taking, and One Thief, I guess, does do that. It is a 1-mana 1/2 and can get you a few ways to control the board. Maybe if you can get a Brain Freeze, Frostbolt, Ray of Frost, something like that in the early game. But overall, yeah, definitely not the way that I think most players would have approached it, and it means that we're all coming down to, at the end of the day, the Mage Mirror with Cobalt Spellkins and Arcane Breath on one side for Glory, the old school package for Tom with Conjurer's Calling, Arcane Intellect, and Jan Disparov. But while it's kind of the old school package, it's also kind of just the new school one. I feel like a lot of pro players, while they had fun playing around with Orange's list with the Arcane Breath and the Cobalt Spellkins, are starting to come back round to this version of the deck.
And Tom also notably has 1 Firebrand in there, which is the old school version. He's cut 1 Violet Spellwing from what I consider to be the standard list in order to fit that in. And I think Firebrand is pretty important in the mirror, at least for coming back in the early game stages, because curving out in the early game can't be underestimated. You can get a lot of chip damage, and if you stay ahead in the early game, even if you're not the first one to get down the Mana Giant Conjurer's Calling, sometimes you can still cheese out a win if you generate enough first.
Absolutely, and I think that for Firebrand, it's not even the fact that you have to have it in hand, it's the threat of it that is the problem. Because if I know that my opponent doesn't have Firebrand, in the mirror, I'm playing Tempo Apprentice, I'm just throwing out all these cheap spells, I'm not particularly worrying about going for some huge combo turn. Because in the early game, Mage is deceptively unreactive a lot of the time, it's got to be said. If they don't hit the Ray of Frost to clear it off, or I suppose the Arcane Breath does add a bit of extra removal in the early game. But it's not ridiculous to hope that your Apprentice can stick.
That's true, especially since some lists are, not running the Arcane Breath altogether because they would rather get the missiles from Spellwing, but if the Spellwing comes down too late, then they won't necessarily have time to generate missiles. Already, though, I think this is like a decent devolving missiles for Tom. It just deletes 2 spells from Glory's hand most of the time.
I was looking at just throwing down Cram Session to try and go like Cram Session AI lead up to a Shenvala. Because if you're not playing anything before you pop off with Shenvala Apprentice on turn 4 with the coin, he could have saved the missiles until that point, right? And gone for it then.
That's fair. I was thinking the follow-up of Arcane Intellect was still pretty decent. I wasn't locking into the Shenvala Apprentice play. I just kind of like the idea of disruption plan from Glory, while Tom can guaranteed have a resource advantage because he had card draw. But obviously, having Lab Partner and Cram Session is best of both worlds because now he is both on board and with the resource advantage.
For Glory here, though, it was a turn where I was almost looking at Evocation for a couple of reasons. Obviously, to try and find spells to go with the Mana Giant, but also as a couple of ways to try and hit a Dragon to activate Arcane Breath with either Font of Power or Primordial Studies. It was a very low value use, and if you hit Apprentice, you would much rather hold on to it. But this is a slow line from Glory. Very, very slow. Oh, but
sure.
It pays off.
It is trying to hold out for something bigger, and this is the bigger thing. But with only one minion to target from Tom, we could still see Glory hold off.
Yes, I very much like holding off here, especially with double Ray of Frost in hand. Like, you're approaching the point where you're Ray of Frosting your own Apprentice or whatever to make room. It really feels awful. Whereas now, when Tom is developing his own big threat, Glory's not happy about it, but don't be too upset, mate. This is still a game, no matter how much he pops off here. Although it's becoming less of a game.
Oh my goodness. Evocation for Tom. That Giant is getting super cheap real soon.
There's not much hand space, to be fair, with even a Lab Partner able to come down on this turn.
Looks like he's just holding the Evocation.
Oh, really?
He's going Salnos here. I'm on board with the Evocation Lab Partner plan instead. If you just get one or two spells, I think that's worth, especially since this is a generated Evocation.
Well, for me, it's just because it's a really high-value hand. You've got Raz, Giant, Wand Thief can pick an expensive spell. I know it's not likely to do much, but if you can get another activation there, it's huge. But on the other side for Glory, that is the card! The best possible
I
top
love
deck.
Mage Mirrors.
Oh, just the best.
Yep, wait, every single Ray of Frost. Is it Breath before Evocation? Because you don't have mana to... that much mana to generate a
Get it
dragon.
out.
I think it's Breath before... Yeah.
We want to hit the triple activation here. That's what we're playing for.
Mm-hmm. Rain Freeze is big.
Oh, no,
Ray of Frost and Frostball! Hello? He has Arcane Explosion as well? Oh, but then he hit the wrong part. Oh, wait. I don't know if there's a way to optimize that with the mana he had left. This
Oh, I didn't
line-
even see the Ray of Frost come down. That was
You
wrong?
went Frostbolt, Ray. There was, I think, a possibility to go for Arcane Explosion, but doesn't necessarily kill the Shanvala. So, in the end, probably still good from Glory. And the Blizzard is necessary for Tom to stay in this.
Right, Giant, Wand Thief, Conjurer's Calling, not playable quite yet here, but any big value spell, I guess is what we're going for. That fits under my, the things I was saying. Pyroblast, technically the pick.
The others do a whole load of nothing, but Tom landing the spell damage with the Blizzard is huge because he can clear the majority of this with just Lab Partner Raz now.
That is a huge deal.
Oh, but Glory has a Giant sticking, doesn't run natural copies of Conjurer's Calling, but there are top decks to let him discover it.
This is a close
no!
game. Glory, it looks like it's going to be just short of getting there. He has to make a very tough decision here of face or trade the Raz. And I think his hand says go face. It doesn't get there.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, but trading feels like it gets there even less,
Yeah.
right? If you are confident that you can generate a fireball in 2 turns, then face is the place. But if you're confident that you can get back on board,
Yeah.
then you trade. But all of that seems to come off the back of an additional magic trick into Evocation or 1. It's really tough to say.
I agree completely. Evocation is the card whether you're going for control or aggro damage here. And Glory has the list that generates many evocations. This is, in my opinion, the reason to play the Dragon package, is because of how consistently you generate evocations.
He could be just more willing to throw one out compared to Tom, who has held on to the first one for relatively long, but he is finally getting down the giant, and it is all on Glory to find a way to generate the second evocation. He placed the first one already.
Oh, no!
You've seen far too many apprentice cyclones with nothing to do.
He can still hit evocation off the top, like you said, off of Magic Trick, Wand Maker, even Cobalt Spellkin. He has enough mana to make something happen with Frost Nova, perhaps.
But for Tom, he could just play his own evocation and say, I have a good chance of killing you this turn. 12 on board.
Counterspell is a huge pickup here.
Okay, holding off for a bit.
Yeah, I think when he found Counterspell, he was like, that has to be played, and I don't have enough mana left.
Yeah, he never loses. While this did look like a miserable Pyroblast, Glory just simply did not have other options that did anything.
Tom won't even let Glory honorably concede the game with the Pyroblast. Even that gets taken away from him, as Tom does go up 3-2, equalizing his overall score now at 2-2 in Division A, looking to be one of those players who's breaking away from the pack in the middle and moving up towards the top of Division A, whereas Glory, in kind of continuing fashion for the Japanese players this season, not wanting to lump them together too much, but with the obvious similarities in their decks, the practicing that they put together, as he goes to the bottom of Division A, Alutemu and Possessi make their way down to the bottom of Division B. It's scary times with only 1 week after